This is Think Out Loud on OPB. I'm Dave Miller. Book bans and challenges have spiked all around the country in recent years. They're being introduced in schools and public libraries and are increasingly brought not by individuals, but by organized groups. Cama O'Connor decided this was not just an issue she was concerned about, she wanted to teach it as well. O'Connor is a romance writer and also a writing and English instructor at Clatsop Community College in Astoria. She's offering a new course this spring on book bans, and she joins us now to talk about this. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Dave, for having me again.
When did you first get interested in banned and challenged books?
You know, I've been studying literature and writing my own for a long time. And I think when I really got invested was in my master's program, looking at some of the books that were available to me in both the public library and school library and seeing some that fit the themes that I was studying, but weren't available in either the college or my public library, and getting interested in that. And then the more I investigated it from a DEI lens, I teach DEI as well. And one of the biggest issues is access to literature, access to entertainment media where students can see themselves represented, or folks can. So it's been on my radar for a long time, Dave, but the interest to teach is in the past year. I think there have been some challenging things in education.
What do you mean by that? What's the connection between the challenges you've seen or experienced and your desire to create this class?
Sure. So we're seeing a nationwide ban on discussions about DEI in general in education, having to wipe instances of DEI. We're not alone. It's not just education. There are calls to scrub any DEI language. And so I guess it all comes down to language, right? And literature is that. So we're seeing a nationwide scrub of some of this access to material that is LGBTQIA plus positive, covers racism, things of that nature. So when it comes to literature and access to entertainment media, we're seeing a really big hit with that.
How much have the reasons for attempts to ban books changed over the decades?
What a great question. So the reasons are relatively consistent, actually, more or less, right? We're seeing a lot more happen now when it comes to disproportionate numbers that pull books with people of color, with LGBTQIA plus. The quote unquote agenda is one of the words that's most frequently used in book challenges. And we see sexually explicit or unsuited for age group being a couple of the reasons. Offensive language in there as well, with drugs and alcohol. And we see magic and the occult, basically anything that someone can deem as anti-American, anti-family values. Those are some of the most frequently used terms for the reasons we're seeing challenges. And again, those are relatively consistent, but the numbers are going up at a rapid rate.
When you say the agenda in quotes, what does that phrase mean? What have you come to understand it trying to communicate?
Yeah, gosh. Well, when we're seeing, I'm going to tie this back to one of the most alarming things that made me want to teach this class, and that's that the folks that are initiating the bans, 11 folks were responsible for over 60% of the challenges and bans in 2024. And that's alarming, across the nation to have 11 folks. And these are from pressure groups. These are from positions of power. So we're talking government officials who have a lot of power and money to be able to make this happen. And so when we're seeing the word agenda, we're seeing the calls for these challenges and bans are treating the entertainment media as if it's an indoctrination, right? Rather than just a person's lived experience, a person's or a group of folks' stories being told in a way that is deemed, again, un-American or anti-family value. So I guess that's what the term shows, and gosh, it's a real negative one. It's not great.
So another way to look at the numbers here is
Hmm.
according to the American Library Organization, in 2024, more than 70% of the demands to censor books in school or public libraries came from pressure groups or government entities that include elected officials or board members or
Correct.
administrators. Parents only accounted for 16% of these demands.
Yep.
In general, what kinds of groups are trying to get books removed from public access?
Yeah, so we see a lot of religious institutions that are calling for that from their local schools. So the top three places books are challenged and banned are schools, and that includes school libraries, public libraries, and then prisons, which was a fascinating one for me to find. Over 10,000 books a year, unique titles are challenged or banned in prison systems, compared to a 4,000 or a little over 4,000 in the public sector. So the groups that we're seeing are government entities, school boards, and so not just parents bringing it to a school board, but the school board themselves, superintendents. We see government officials, state officials that are calling for the removal of certain books in certain counties. So the alarming part is really that these pressure groups carry a lot of power. So the number of challenges turning into actual bans is because of these groups is pretty high.
If one of the big arguments in favor of these challenges or bans or attempted bans
Mhm.
is, this is not age appropriate. We've got to keep these young kids away from this material away from these young kids.
Mhm.
I'm curious about the arguments when we're talking not about schools or school libraries, but public libraries where
Yeah.
adults would have access to this material. Are the arguments there the same?
They are. It's because it affects access. And what's very interesting to me is, I really love the language that PEN America and the ALA have on their websites, and it says false claims of. And that word false shows that aspect of public libraries, and the reason for that access is so that folks can have material that represents their lived story or their lived experience, and to invite folks without that lived experience to engage in that material, right? That's how we find out about cultures that are different from us without having to leave the confines of our own home. So in a public library, if that's accessible to just anyone, there is a real fear. We see words like divisive and fear mongering, and again, that anti-family value being used in public library challenges and bans. So yeah, I think that's, in my opinion, it's a blanket excuse that's unfounded, and Penn and ALA are citing that with that word false, those false accusations.
I'm talking right now with Kama O'Connor, a writing and English instructor at Clatsop Community College. Later this month, she's going to be starting a new class on book bans and book challenges at the community college in Astoria. By the time a book gets to a library or a school, it's out in the world. How much pressure is being levied on publishers to prevent books from being published in the first place?
That's a really great question. And as a writer myself, so this was part of my interest in this from not the professional level in what I'm teaching and finding access for my students, but in what I write. So I write romance novels that fall under one of these categories, right? That have some explicit nature in them. And so I think there's something called a shadow ban. And there's some self-censoring that happens, and we see a lot of publishers not publishing. There was an entire arm of the romance publishing world that did not publish people of color romantic element stories, and and they have been vilified, right? So there is that negative impact on the publishing world if they choose to pre-ban topics or books, and we're seeing that, which is great, right? That's positive for the anti-book ban community, libraries, teachers, librarians who are all trying to get access to these books. But we do still see it out there for sure. They also have distinct publishing arms within a publishing house that will look at particular stories. And so it doesn't fall under their parent imprint, but there will be a side arm imprint that will house those collections oftentimes.
In recent years, I've seen plenty of displays in libraries and in bookstores of banned books. It almost seems like in these venues that the bans or the challenges are a kind of badge of honor, or a marketing ploy in a sense.
Absolutely.
Does an attempted ban make some people more likely to want to read a book?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And when we look at the counties in which these bans and challenges are happening, it actually has that adverse effect, right? It's the inverse relationship that we're seeing, and it's a distinct immediate uptick in both the sale of those books in bookstores, the marketing for the books, and the requests. So lots of libraries will talk about requests for books, right? And they'll keep a list of what they want to see, or what people are asking for, and that's what's happening. It's kind of neat.
Well,
We love it.
it almost seems like a fundamental misunderstanding of the classic dynamic of that parents know of. If you tell anybody they can't have something, can't see something, can't do something, that thing becomes way more enticing. What are you going to be having your students do in this class?
Great question. I'm so looking forward to this. So I've broken the class into 3 modules. We've got to have the talk, right? And the talk is going to be what is the difference between a ban and a challenge? What leads a challenged book to become banned, and who are the folks doing it? Where is it happening? Why is it happening? So we're going to spend about 4 out of the 10 weeks looking at that and reading the texts that are more likely to be banned in certain places. So we've got we've got a memoir, a novel. We've got a couple kids' books, and then we're going to look at some shows and films because it's entertainment media. It's a humanities class. And then I really want the students to pick a book that we don't have the problem of these shadow bans at our college library. We have such a great collection of banned books. And I want my students to engage with one that looks at their lived story. What is something about you that might lead to a ban or a challenge if we're these reasons? Research project and see where those books are banned. Look at if it's banned in the county. And then finally, they're going to wrap up with a creative project of their own, or they get to write their story themselves and quote unquote publish it. Create a kid's book or a podcast or something that shares their story with others so that they can bring more words into the world, which is the point of all of it, right?
And for that last project, is the idea that you want them to be more free in terms of telling their story in the context of an increase in book bans? What's the connection between book bans or challenges and the final project? And you have a minute to answer that.
You bet. I want them looking at their story as sacred. And, a lot of the reasons books are banned and challenged is because of the lived experience not matching what folks want their kids to see and engage with because it's shameful to them, not the folks writing it, not the folks telling the story. So I want to decrease the shame of sharing a story. And invite people to be creative and give back to literature and add more literature to the world that includes representation. So that's my hope. And thank you. This is great.
Cama O'Connor, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Cama O'Connor is a romance writer. She's also a writing and English instructor at Clatsop Community College in Astoria. She has developed a new course at the college on banned and challenged books.